on with the rankings, which are somehow given a tremendous amount of importance. So when students are choosing, where should I go? And how those rankings connect with how good that university actually is to prepare you for life, I don't see that strong connection. I think there's a strong connection between those rankings and things like research budgets. So maybe for specific majors, if you're going to get into universities that have large grants, top research, again, same with the curriculum. On a tangent, this is a bit like museums. I have two museums nearby. One which I went to when I was very young. It was the converted house of one of the rulers of the city, and they basically took this. It's a small house, traditional Bedouin or house for this type of climate. Wind towers and a big courtyard in the middle, and just sort of four walls and rooms, along the side. But they dug underneath this old house and turned it into a museum and put rooms. And I remember, we'd walk into a room. Even now, this is maybe 35 years later, and I still remember it so clearly. Room number one was the market. So you walk into this room. It's super narrow. You've got stalls, all along on the left and right, and you've got these life-size mannequins. So sort of the pearl trader, the spice seller, the lady selling maybe fruits and vegetables, the old guy selling whatever. And it's just that walking through this with all the sounds, they had these recordings going on, and so you could hear them pushing their wares and, buy my vegetables or buy my pearls or whatever it is. And I will never forget, what that market feels and looks like. That was an immersive experience, and it really put me in the market from, let's say, 70, 80 years ago. And then the next room was the desert room. So all of a sudden it's pitch black. It's really cold. They've got the AC going really high. There's a tent. There's a crackling fire. There are a few people sitting around the fire drinking coffee. There's a goat, and they've got all the sounds, going on, and then stars in the ceiling. So it's you literally feel like you're in the desert at night, and so you're discovering what Bedouin culture looks like in the desert. And then the third room, the last one, was painted completely in blue. Where you're walking is actually in the ceiling, you've got the bottom of a traditional wooden dhow, which is the ship that they use in this part of the world. So you're looking up at the ceiling as if you're underwater, you're scuba diving basically, and you've got the hull of the boat sort of sticking out of the ceiling. And there's a cable, and there's an upside down pearl diver with a clip on his nose in his loincloth, reaching out to pearls that are on the seabed. And where you're standing is on the seabed, and you're amongst sort of the fish, etc. So it puts you into what is pearl diving in a few seconds. And that was a very big part of the culture over here. This was not a super expensive museum, but it just was a phenomenal experience. Many years later, this spectacular museum with, I think it was a $300 million budget, very, very well-renowned name that came to Dubai, or it came to the UAE, not to Dubai. And I remember, we went on a trip. We stayed in a hotel next to the museum, and this is a big deal. We took the whole family. You guys were with us. And we were 3 or 4 families together. My parents came as well. and the building is just magnificent, like this stunning structure, etc. And we walked in, and I remember they gave us headsets. So I thought, great, the technology is starting. It's going to be this really cool experience. And we go into room 1, and then room 2, and room 3, and room after room after room. It's basically artifacts. So here's, let's say this is the Greek era, and here's a coin from the Greek era, and then a bunch of text around that, like what this coin was and who minted it. And then it was the shield from some soldier, and so a piece of this and a piece of that, and all from an archaeological, historical perspective, I'm sure super valuable artifacts that were very difficult to find. But I think, like the second room in, I just started to really get bored. It's just too much info. There's no experience. It's just a bunch of stuff. And the reason this whole story is basically, I was thinking, who is this working for? This is working for a historian, an archaeologist, someone who already knows a lot and is really looking specifically at this piece after the other piece after the other piece, and where was it found and what did it represent, etc. But for 99% of the people, I think the first experience works far better, So if I'm in this market, and then at the end you show me, by the way, like that was a replica, but here's a real coin from that era, excellent. Like I've visualized the market, I kind of understood a bit about what's going on, and then you give me some info, some artifacts. That kind of makes sense, right? But just the artifact after artifact, right? So which museum serves its purpose better? I definitely think the first one. And I think university is a bit like that as well. It's designed for certain very specific majors. Like I said, typically people going into research, very academic, but not for the vast majority of work, or definitely not for entrepreneurial work, and not for an entrepreneurial attitude, even if you're working in a company, in terms of doing your own thing, being creative, problem solving, and being practical. So the practical experience, the applicability of what we learn in university, I think is a major issue. University as such, for this period, I mean, by the way, if we do visualize how things could look, it might not, just like those two museums at first glance, might not look tremendously different, right? They're a museum, you walk in, you go from chamber to chamber, right? But small, what you prioritize can really make a huge difference.